Hi, Vinyl Community. It's Glen Kellaway from the basement. Here with my friend Sam St. John. How you doing, Sam?
Doing well, Glenn. I'm always in a better mood to do these videos when I know that they're coming.
Yeah, I look forward to them too. So we've got a name for our little episodes here. We call it the Sam and Glen Show. We came up with that last week, so we're pretty happy about that, and we're really enjoying doing these. This week, we're going to showcase our favorite musicians as instrument players, not as singers or songwriters. Just how they appeal to us and what they mean to us as actual musicians playing their instruments. So we're going to do 12 each. We decided not to rank them because, 12. They're all great musicians, we think, and to say one's better than the other is kind of, hard to do. So. Sam, wondering what criteria did you use to choose artists? Like, was there anything that you went, hey, this is the reason why I like this guy? Or
Yeah, and to back it up just a little bit, I do want to give props. I think it was All the World's a Stage, I think was the first one to
Steve?
mention the Sam and Glenn show, Steve. And then I think shortly thereafter, or around the same time, Randy Nelson also used that same jargon. So thanks to the
Cool.
loyal fans.
I didn't catch those videos, so thank you
So
guys, Randy and Steve.
check those guys out.
Two great friends of the show.
Indeed, yeah, the roadies.
Yeah, love guys.
So back to your question, the criteria, a lot of it was based not necessarily on their skill, but how they've influenced me. So I know I've got at least 2 or 3 on here that are definitely not the best at what they do, but the way that they play is how I like to try to play. So that was a big part of it. Some of the other ones, they can knock it out on stage. They could go into the studio and do the same thing, even if they were with their band that they're normally with, or if they're playing as a guest musician for somebody else. I've got a couple of those guys on here that, their names are on all sorts of different album credits, but they're also part of other groups as well. So versatility. Now, I did not, and just as a spoiler, I did not pick somebody, for example, like Jeff Lynne, who, though he's a fantastic musician, and especially his last couple of ELO albums that he's put out under his moniker, he's played just about everything on there, from percussion to bass to keys, vocals, all the harmony layers. Out of all these people, I would dare say he's probably the best musician, but he's not specific to one instrument. Yeah. On stage, he plays guitar. He might get behind a piano, but it's, Jeff Lynne is a producer. Mm-hmm. Brian Wilson is their whole craft is what makes them so great. So that's kind of how I went into it. Just people that inspired me, and then also just some that are just killer musicians. No other reason.
Yeah, I like that too. I definitely went for the inspiration thing on a few guys, and some of them inspired me to widen my musical horizons, listening to different stuff too. So that, and also everybody I picked, I think, is really distinctive. Like when you hear, by the time you've heard the first 2 bars of the song, you know who it is.
Yeah.
Like, nobody has to tell you. You just go, man, like that guy's playing just is so unique. Mm-hmm. And have their own distinctive tone. I use that as an important criteria too. And I didn't go with a lot of classic rockers. I kind of went with a lot of instrumentalists. So we'll see. Okay. It should be interesting between the 2 of us, what we come up with, because neither of us know what we picked. So we're going to match on anything. I think today we don't match on anything. That's my guess. Maybe one.
Okay.
I'm going to give us one. How many do you think?
I think there is 1, possibly 2 that we could match on.
Okay. Interesting. This will be good.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have some guesses as to about 3 of yours that I know that are probably going to show up, but I'll keep that a secret.
Okay. All right. So without further ado, let's just start. Like we said, this just because you name this guy first doesn't mean he's number 12. He could be number 1, 2. We're just gonna name them. So we'll just go back and forth with one each, I'm assuming. Is that the way we're gonna do it?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna let you start. Because you're the best one.
Okay, that's terrible reason, but
I had no other reason.
Okay, then we'll take it. The first one is a guitarist, and he is the guy that kind of brought Glenn and I together in our videos. And we've talked about this before, this guy, but not necessarily as a guitarist, as a musician. And that is Mr. Mike Campbell on the guitar. And of course, this is his solo record, essentially, with his side project, The Dirty Knobs. This was an album that came out last year, but it's not about the album. It's just what I'm showing to represent Mike Campbell. And of course, he's the original guitarist from the Heartbreakers. He also sits in with Fleetwood Mac for the past few years, kind of taking over Lindsey Buckingham's guitar role. He just has such a distinct style. You know that it's a Heartbreaker song, or that or that the Heartbreakers have a hand in the song. I mean, you listen to a song like, to bring the Heartbreakers into it for a minute, the solo on American Girl, first album, last track, he just goes to town. But the beginning of it, just that ring, that bang, 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 and that D chord that he plays is just so distinctly Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Mike Campbell, essentially, it should be Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers with Mike Campbell. I mean, because he was Tom Petty's number 2 writer, producer, whatever you want to call it. But he can make any guitar ring. He can play mandolin as well, but guitar, of course, is where he shines. A couple of standout tracks, that American Girl, A Woman in Love, which is just a killer ringing guitar solo. Like, just the intro, it's like bow, now, 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 bow. It's so Heartbreakers. And then also the song Stop Dragging My Heart Around, which the Heartbreakers back up Stevie Nicks on. Mm-hmm. Again, it's just it's Mike Campbell. I mean, you wouldn't need Stevie and Tom to play to know that that's either the Heartbreakers playing or that's Mike Campbell having a hand in it. And actually, I didn't even intend for this to be the case, but I was talking to Glenn before we recorded that I'm seeing Jackson Browne next week. And so I've been listening to a lot of Jackson Browne songs, and a song from the early 90s that he did is called Miles Away. And the guitar sounded familiar. So I was looking at the credits, and of course, Mike Campbell is playing all over it.
I didn't know that.
Killer guitar song. I mean, if you listen to it, you're like, of course, that could be an early 90s Heartbreaker song. Just take Tom Petty's voice put it on Jackson's. So Mike Campbell, I love him to death. I think he's incredibly criminally underrated as a guitarist, but I love everything that he touches. It's all fantastic.
Great pick. I told Sam this before we started tuning that I started out with a list of 24 musicians and then had to whittle it down to 12 from there. And Mike Campbell made my list of 24, and he didn't make my list, but he came damn close. Like, because he's one of my favorite, say, rock guitarists, and he is distinctive. Like I was saying before, one of my criteria was easily identifiable, and he is. He's a riff machine. I always think when I think about.
Yeah, but he doesn't overplay. He doesn't get too jammy.
Exactly what the song needs, and he comes up with these catchy riffs, and breakdown's another one. There's a whole bunch of them where just the guitar part is just.
There's hundreds.
Yeah, I can't say enough about Mike Campbell. That's a great pick. Dan, hold on. I'm going to change my list. No, okay, so I'm going to start with a guy who I think is easily identifiable and one of the great guitar players. When I first heard their first single, right away, I just went, there's something about that guitar. Sultans of Swing and Dire Straits. Mark Knopfler. I don't know what to say. This first album blew me away. I immediately bought it when Sultans of Swing came out, and been a fan ever since of Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler solo stuff. And he is like, you can tell Mark Knopfler from the first note.
Yeah.
He has got his own tone and distinctive finger style playing that I know you like to play a finger style guitar. Can you figure out anything he's doing, or?
No, he's tough. He kind of makes up his own chords too. Like they're not fully like real chords.
Yeah, he's amazing. Like, what was I going to say? So, he was ranked I found he was ranked number 27 by Rolling Stone in the 100 greatest guitarists. So I didn't realize he would be ranked that high in all time, but deservedly so.
Pretty good, yeah.
I was reading that preparing for this video, that he came up with that finger style playing by accident. He was just at a party with some friends, and they were all just jamming around, and the only thing there for him to play was this old acoustic guitar that had the most warped neck that virtually made the guitar unplayable. So the guy who owned it had put these really light strings on it, so at least they could play it. And Mark Knopfler was trying to just strum or do what he normally a regular guitar player would do, and he couldn't do it. So he started finger picking, and then he started, as the night gone, he started, like, he had an epiphany about how to approach his finger picking style, and from then on he just developed it and man, became a master of it, whatever the heck it is that he does. But totally distinctive. So Mark Knopfler there. This is one of my favorite solo albums. I wanted to show that too, the Ragpicker's Dream. It's more of an acoustic. I guess he does a lot of acoustic stuff. He does a lot of Irish kind of music too. Some of it says a few songs like that. But I love this album, the Ragpicker's Dream. So any of the Dire Straits albums are great. So that's my.
I was gonna say he was all over artists in the 80s. I mean, he played with Chet Atkins. He played with him. Of course, he's with Bob Dylan. Tons and tons in the 80s. Infidels is just covered in Mark Knopfler. Or the Shot of Love album. I mean, you can tell again. You know it's Mark Knopfler, and he's one of those guys. Like any good, like a real guitarist, he's just as impressive acoustically as he is electric.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very cool.
Good pick.
You're up, buddy.
Alrighty, I'm gonna jump now to. I'm gonna call it the organ, but it can also work with piano too, because he plays a killer piano as well. That is, I'm gonna show his picture on the back here if I can find it. Okay, down at the very bottom there. You probably can't see it because it's a very tiny picture on the album. But to flip the album over, you know that album cover, Mr. Rod Argent of the Zombies and of Argent. I got into the Zombies in 2013 or so. I think what got me into it was listening to Tom Petty radio on XM. It was a Heartbreakers cover version of I Want You Back Again, which I had a Zombies greatest hits, but I think that really like pushed me into the Zombies world, and I bought the album Odyssey and Oracle. But Rod Argent, from what I understand, was not a piano player when the Zombies formed, that he kind of was forced on because nobody else was wanting to play it. And so he was, making up stuff. And, of course, he's fantastic. If you've never heard the Zombies, of course, Time of the Season, huge organ solo at the end, which when they do it live, I was fortunate enough to see Rod and Colin Blunstone live in 2014. One of my favorite shows, probably a top 5 concert for me. And they did like a little suite of Odyssey and Oracle songs. And when they did Time of the Season, I mean, it was like a 3-minute solo at the end, like toward the end. And he was incorporating like classical pieces into it and things, because he's a classical pianist as well. He's put out some classical albums. But I mean, he can make an organ just wail. And he can also, again, like with piano from the same album, like a song like This Will Be Our Year, which is almost like hymn-like. It's incredible how easy he makes it sound, but how much he's doing with the jazz influences, with some R&B, with the classical. He incorporates so much. He just fuses it all together. And I mean, I think, again, somebody else like Mike Campbell, who's criminally underrated. at their craft. Plus he can write a song, so he's kind of got it all. But definitely organ is what he'll go down in history as, somebody that played that solo on Time of the Season.
Now, have you explored any of his own band, Argent?
Only the couple of songs they play on the radio.
Yeah,
I've
Hold
never
Your
dug
Head Up,
into them.
and
And God Gave Rock and Roll to You. Yeah.
yeah, pretty talented guy for sure. Argent was a great band, and then you can't argue with the Zombies. Or Odyssey and Oracle is a fantastic record.
The masterpiece. It's top album for me. Top album.
Yeah. Wow, that came out of left field for me, but I love the pick. Okay, my next one, multi-instrumentalist. First time I heard of him was when I first heard this album when it came out.
Ah.
And that would be Mr. David Lindley.
Uh-huh.
I saw Jackson on this tour when this album came out, and David Lindley was just amazing. He was so good. I've seen him live a few times. I saw him once with Roy Cooter. I've seen him by himself a couple times in small clubs. He's just an amazing musician. The guy can play. I mean, it was funny. I heard a term today that he's, most of the time the guy plays a bunch of music instruments. So they call him a multi-instrumentalist. They say they refer to David Lindley as a maxi instrumentalist because he's so good.
Yeah.
But he plays guitar, bass, banjo, lap steel, mandolin, bouzouki. I mean, he plays anything and just plays every instrument. He's a master.
Wow.
And his work on those early Jackson Browne albums, For Every Man and Late for the Sky, especially, are just like his playing holds those albums together as far as I'm concerned. Like, they're great songs and beautiful Jackson Browne work.
Yeah.
But David Lindley's guitar just flows, especially in For Every Man. It glues the whole album together. It's really cohesive, and I just am a huge fan of David Lindley's. Then he had his own band called El Rayo X, which that was the first album they put out. And he did a cover of that song, Mercury Blues, which is a classic song. The other one was called Very Greasy, David Lindley and El Rayo X. They do some cool covers on here. They do a cover of Papa Was a Rolling Stone that is just fantastic. They do a version of Werewolves of London. He's just an amazing guitarist and, instrumentalist.
Pretty cool. Yeah, you can't have Jackson Browne without that slide sound, especially those early 4 or 5 albums. It's nothing. It makes the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. That's a good pick. Alrighty, I'm already double dipping in a band here, so I'm hopping back to the Heartbreakers, because I'm also sticking to the same instrument too as Rod Argent. I'm going for this gentleman right here. It's a very terrible picture. That's Mr. Benmont Tinch.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he, again, the original member of the Heartbreakers. He was in Mudcrutch with Tom Petty. He can play, the organ and the pedal organ, the piano, the Hammond, like the B3. But I mean, just his acoustic piano playing. I know I've mentioned it in some Tom Petty videos I've done. There's a version of Southern Accents from Tom Petty's live anthology CD where Benmont is playing it's just Ben and Tom for most of the song, just the two of them. And just the grand piano sound is just beautiful how he plays. I mean, and of course, he's played just as many sessions as Mike Campbell has. He played with Stevie Nicks. He played with the Heartbreakers with Johnny Cash in the 90s on the Rick Rubin albums. He's played with the Avett brothers quite a bit with Rick Rubin. Again, he's a go-to guy for Rick Rubin to pull into the studio. And then you have an organ, like a biting organ solo, like "Don't Do Me Like That," where he's just wailing into the organ, very Jay Giles band style. So he can play any style, boogie woogie. He can play rock. He can. Again, he's just an all-around great pianist, a great organist. And I think I just did a contest for pub tunes for Mike, and Benmont was he was my piano player in that band, because he's the guy I would pull out into the studio if I needed him to make my album. So that is number 3 on my
I was
list
just
of
trying
12.
to look up his session work on Wikipedia, but it doesn't really show too much. But he's worked with Sarah Watkins too. I know he's been on her records. Like I said, Dylan. There's a million of
Oh
them.
yeah,
I see his name show up in a lot of stuff. He's a well-regarded guy. There's no doubt.
and he's on a couple of songs. He's on at least one of the songs on that Dirty Knobs album as well. So him and Mike are still good friends and play together.
Yeah, he's an amazing musician. Another good pick. I didn't even think of them. You're coming up with some very cool ones. My next one is a bass player. Currently a member of King Crimson, but he has played. He's played on over 500 albums. Tony Levin.
What a slacker.
Yeah. So he's toured with Paul Simon. He's Peter Gabriel's go-to bass player. He's been in King Crimson since they kind of reformed the new band in 2014 or wherever it was. Plus, he played in King Crimson earlier in his career. He's played with John Lennon. He played over 500 albums. Who hasn't he played with? So yeah, I'm just a huge fan of his playing. He's just an interesting bass player. He could play a bass solo and you're just mesmerized by how beautiful it sounds. The bass, you don't really think of the bass as a beautiful instrument, but trying to find a picture of him here. Tony takes all the photographs on King Crimson tours. He's a photography nut. There's the King Crimson lineup. But it's funny when you see King Crimson. Robert Fripp has this thing. He can't stand anyone taking a photograph when he's playing, and they have a sign at the start of the show sitting on the front of the stage saying, "Do not even try to take a picture." And there's been stories of Robert Fripp basically just ending shows because people were not listening to what he asked, his request, and I know there was a show in Toronto where they didn't do an encore because he was pissed because someone took a picture, and so they always say, Tony holds up his camera to take a picture of you, you can take a picture of us. So that's kind of the way they do it. But Tony Levin, besides that, he has his own solo albums out. Not a lot of bass players do that, but this one's called World Diary. It's more of it is kind of a world music type CD, but there's lots of them. And he also he invented the funk fingers. So they're like drumsticks that fit on the end of your fingers, like finger picks, and you tap the bass with them, and it kind of gives you a flat bass sound.
Wow.
And also plays this Chapman stick. Have you ever seen the Chapman stick? All it is a neck, but it's probably like, I don't know, 8 inches wide, and it has a whole bunch of strings on it, and you just play. It's almost like tapping on a guitar. That's what it's a beautiful sounding instrument. So he does that, the Chapman stick, and he's just an incredible musician. World class.
Well, this moves into that little thing I was talking about earlier about what drew me to these artists. This is one of those that he's definitely not the best at his craft. That's just a given, because he plays, and it's if you can play a little bit of guitar, you can probably at least mimic what he's doing to an extent. But again, he's not known as a guitarist, but he's the man that we just talked about last week. And that's John Prine. That's because he, as I've mentioned in last week's video, he's the #1 inspiration to me on acoustic guitar. Especially as I was learning, he, essentially proved that you just need the first 3 frets to make a good song. And just he has like kind of a mix of like a Travis picking, like a Merle Travis picking. Mm-hmm. He's definitely got some bluegrass influence. some Carter family, I would say. Not really like, it's not really jazz, but definitely Carter family, Merle Travis.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I mean, listen to songs. I mean, of course, he had Steve Goodman as well, kind of dueling off of him. But you listen to songs like Souvenirs or In Spite of Ourselves, or even his cover version of Clay Pigeons by Blaze Foley. Just it's simple guitar, but it's beautiful. And I could just listen to John Prine just pick. And I would have loved to have sat in a guitar shop with him just to see him pick. I mean, he wore the little thumb pick and everything when he played, but I love how he played an acoustic guitar, even though a lot of times it was the same chords, just in different variations with a capo up and down the neck. I mean, I love it. I love how he plays. It's half of his music to me. So John Prine.
Wow. Well, you're not going to get an argument from me. I love John's playing too. It's might be simple, but it's not. If that makes any sense. Just try and yeah. Just try and play like John Prine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think
Exactly.
that you almost need two brains, right? You got your bass going, and your fingers are picking the melody, and you almost have two brains to do that stuff really well. That's an awesome pick. I can't say enough about John Prine. We went on for an hour and a half last week. So
Exactly.
My next one is a mandolin player.
Very good.
Probably the greatest I think one of the most talented musicians on earth, just playing one instrument, the mandolin. Mr. Chris Daly. You know Chris?
Chris Daly.
Yeah, from originally from Nickel Creek with Sarah and Sean Watkins. That's their album there. I don't know if they have a picture of him, but Chris is just a phenomenal mandolin player and can play anything. I mean, he can play bluegrass, folk, blues, classical. He's collaborated with a ton of people. He's just a fantastic musician, great showman. Current band is the Punch Brothers, which I didn't pull any albums from, but just to show you a couple of, just to see his collaborations, you can kind of see what's going on here. Here's Chris with Yo-Yo Ma, Stuart Duncan, Edgar Meyer, the Goat Rodeo Sessions. Amazing acoustic instrumental album. Fantastic. Here's Chris's classical album. I mean, the man can just beautiful playing. Yeah. This is probably my favorite of his solo albums. It's called How to Grow a Woman from the Ground. It's a beautiful, beautiful album. Most of the guys from the Punch Brothers play on that with him. Another great one is I love the name of the title of this album. Not All Who Wander Are Lost. Great title.
Yeah, he's a talent.
I was looking at my list going, I've been fortunate enough to meet, I think, 5 of the people on my list, which is pretty cool. Chris was one of them. I was at one of the great music festivals you'll ever attend. I don't care what kind of music you like, is the Telluride Bluegrass Festival that's held in the 3rd week of June in Telluride, Colorado. It was my dream trip from the 70s. And we went 2008, I think. And I got to see, everybody, like some guys I'd seen before, but, I got to see a lot of my musical heroes there. Chris was there. And I got a chance to talk to him for a few minutes. And big baseball fan, which is I am too. He's a Cubs fan. So, Chris Daly, amazing, amazing musician.
He is that. Yeah. And a funny guy too.
Yeah. Yeah, if you ever get a chance to see him, they're a great band live.
Okay. I'm not big on cliches, and I'm not big on picking the best of the best, just because I like to be, Mr. hipster, get away from the mainstream.
You are nothing but
But
hip, man. You're the hippest guy in the BC.
that's my shirt. And my shirt is, floral Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah.
That's what I wore to work.
That's why I like doing these videos with you, because it kind of gives me a cool quotient. I don't think of myself as cool in any way, and when I'm with people like you, like, oh yeah, it's
Sure, you're cool.
guy.
You met Chris Daly and John Prine. I mean, good grief. So I'm going for bass.
Oh,
I mean, I don't.
who can argue with this?
Nobody should argue. If you do argue with it, you haven't heard good music.
You don't have a clue. I agree.
For those of you that are ill-informed, this is Abbey Road by the Beatles, and the bass player in question is Ringo Starr. Oh, excuse me, Paul McCartney. But you're talking. Paul McCartney doesn't just feel like a good bass player. I got really good advice from a guy at my local guitar shop who said that far more bands need a bass player than need a guitar player, because you'll always have a better guitar player than you. Yeah. You'll never be the best guitar player, especially like in a small town, like with little bands here and there. But there's always a need for a bass player.
Well, okay, can I interject for a minute? But
please, Mr.
I got that advice too, and I took up the bass because I wanted to put a classic rock band together, and I played the bass for a few years and then put a band together. But guitar players always think they know how the bass player should play.
I get that too. Yeah. So there's a common misconception about the bass, being easier, because the bass requires a lot more theory behind it than the guitar does. Guitar, you can just learn the chords. However, what I'm getting to is a bass player in any country band, if you will, they're just filling a pocket. They're just going boom, ticka boom, ticka boom. They're hitting that root note, and they're staying there where they need to.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney on the bass he's not playing bass. He's playing a melody, a time signature completely different than like what John Lennon and George Harrison were playing, or what Ringo was playing. Yeah. And if anybody has watched the Hulu documentary with Paul McCartney and Rick Rubin, who I mentioned earlier, they isolate that bass, and Paul is like singing one song, and then they'll break down John on rhythm guitar, and it's a completely different song. I mean, it's like faster, and McCartney's just boom, 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 like he's going all over the place. Because I've looked up tabs to Beatles songs, like I'm looking at the bass, I'm like, that's not what that Beatles song sounds like. Like, I can't play this. That doesn't make, that's a wrong tab. Yeah. But no, it's Paul McCartney, who was a guitar player before he was with the Beatles, and they needed a bass player, so he was like, well, I'm the odd man out, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, he was the only one who would do it.
I mean, just listen, it's on YouTube, and you can, if you have any of the Beatles box sets, there are some isolated bass lines. Specifically just a couple of different ones. You have, of course, Come Together, which is iconic. Boom, 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 boom. But a song like All My Lovin', when you isolate that bass, it's just like, it's so fast. It's so much going on. And if people know anything about bass, for me personally, it's very hard to sing and play the bass.
I couldn't do it. I when I had a song to sing in my band and I had to play the bass, I would just hit a root note. Like I couldn't play a bass line. It would just at the start of the whatever chord we were playing, I'd hit the root note once, then sing my line. If we change chords, and I'd hit the root note.
Let it ring out a little bit. Yeah.
There was no way I was gonna move around.
But watch Paul McCartney live. Like watch the Wings Over America tour. Like good grief. Yeah. Like how can he sing? Because he's going a completely different time signature than what he's singing, and then what the drummer's doing. So it's like three different time signatures.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney, as far as I'm concerned, the best at his craft. That's all I got to say. Paul McCartney.
I mean, I love his bass playing, and being someone who plays a little bit of bass, and he learned a lot, because don't forget the Beatles came from the Motown R&B thing. The Stones came from the blues, and the Beatles came from Motown, basically. Yeah. And James Jamerson, who is the famous, I don't know if you know what James Jamerson is, the guy from Motown Studios. He's on, anytime you hear a Motown record, James Jamerson probably played the bass on it. And he had a distinctive style of playing these really melodic bass lines, because he came from a jazz background. and Paul picked up a lot of stuff from James Jamerson, and Paul played that way. And
I
from
would
what I
say
also
so.
understand, that Paul, a lot of times, I mean, usually you lay down the bass and the drums first at the start of a session. Paul would wait and do that last, the bass. He would wait till everybody'd done their part, and then he would come up with these really unique bass lines. Like, you listen to his bass in Something. He does all these
Yeah.
little slides into the root note and stuff. It just, I mean, just he's Paul is one of the great musicians ever, and yeah, and a melody machine. He like, even if you take away from his bass playing, just talk to him as just a songwriter who can come up with that many melodies. Like, still in almost 80 years old, he's still doing it. Like, they come into his head like he's a computer or something. It's insane. Nothing but bow to Paul McCartney.
Yeah, Sir Paul, bass man.
Great pick. I was going to pick him, and I thought, nah, it's too obvious for me being a Beatles fan. I can't.
I couldn't do it.
I'm glad you did it. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did that. Okay. We're at our 8th pick here. Well, so it's our 4th pick. It's
6th.
Is this our 6th? Yeah. Oh, yeah, because we started at 12.
We're halfway there.
Okay. I'm going with another mandolin player.
Very good. Bring it on.
Started out with the Newgrass Revival. I don't know if you were listening to those guys.
I know where you're going, yeah.
There's a picture of them.
Speaking of Telluride.
Sam Bush. Yeah, speaking of Telluride. Man, can this guy play. He also has the Sam Bush Band right now, which if anybody ever gets a chance to see.
I saw them for free. And it was the biggest surprise I've ever had at a concert, because I went in knowing really nothing, and it blew me away.
Wow, where did you see them?
I was doing some blogging at a local concert venue, and that was one of the shows that was coming up, and they said, could you write a review on it? So I said, sure.
Wow.
And this was 2018, I guess, and they did a version of Uncle Pen by Bill Monroe that blew me away. Killed it.
They're incredible. He's an amazing musician, and he has this kind of chopping. When Sam's playing backup, he chops on the chords and mutes.
It's rhythmic. Yeah.
It's so rhythmic. It sounds like he's cutting with a saw or something. Like, he's just so like, it's like you can't. I don't know how to emulate it, but
definitely Chris Daly definitely learned a thing or two, because he does that too.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Yeah, I love Sam Bush. And here's a live album actually from when he played it, from his shows at Telluride. It was funny. He never comes up here. Like, he never comes to North. And I saw him at Telluride when I went there. They were amazing. At the time, he had just been in Nashville working on sessions with John Oates from Hall & Oates, because John Oates was making an album. It ended up coming out a few years later. It's called Arkansas. It's actually not a bad album. And Sam Bush played on it. So the next week, when they were in the studio, Sam was leaving the studio and going to Telluride to play that weekend. And he brought John Oates with him. He said, you got to come to Telluride, check this out, right? And so they did their show. And then all of a sudden, halfway through their performance, they said, oh, we're bringing out a friend. They brought up John Oates. And they did Man Eater.
That's not expected.
As a reggae song. And it was frigging killer. I'll never forget that performance of that one song. Was so good. Sometimes when you see a concert, there's just something you see that just sticks with you forever. That's one of those moments.
I've got a lot of memories like that, yeah.
Oh, it was killer. And then I went to see Bale Fleck and the Flecktones at the Jazz Festival. They're playing in a tent in Toronto at the Jazz Festival. And Sam Bush comes up and starts playing with them. He came to Toronto with them and played. So I got to see him there too. But one of my favorite musicians of all time. And he's a great singer. You want to hear his version of Girl from the North Country, just with him and the mandolin. I think you can probably look it up on YouTube. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Wow.
But Sam Bush, one of my all-time favorites.
Very cool. All right, I'm going off the bluegrass and rock Americana grid here for just a minute. I'm heading to jazz. I'm going back. This is gonna be my third pick for somebody on the keys. And this is the only thing that I have for this gentleman, so I apologize that it's so large. But it's a new box set that just came out. But the gentleman I'm referring to is Mr. Bill Evans.
Oh, wow.
On the piano. This is a box set called Everybody Still Digs Bill Evans, because he had an album called Everybody Digs Bill Evans, when he was alive. This is a career retrospective is the subtitle of it. And so there's live tracks, there's tons of instrumentals, there's some with vocal, tracks. There's a unreleased, it's a 5-disc set. The last disc is all unreleased live material. And this spans from 1956, 1980. But anyway, Bill Evans is just a relaxing, jazzy. I mean, he's one of those guys that influenced so many. He played with, all the jazz greats. He has a couple of really good albums with Tony Bennett, who, by the way, is turning 95 today. August
happy
3rd.
birthday, Mr. Bennett.
So,
wow.
Happy birthday, Tony. God bless him.
I think he's battling Alzheimer's now.
I think he has a couple of shows that he's going to do as like a farewell with Lady Gaga. They're going to do it together up in New York. And I think maybe
nothing but the best, man. But a giant of the industry for sure.
If you want to hear just great jazz, listen to those two albums, because it's just Bill Evans on piano and Tony Bennett singing. And I mean, I've really gotten to Bill Evans this year. I've never really given him much thought prior, but in the morning when I go into work, when nobody's there yet, I play some instrumental jazz music because it's a good morning thing. I've got coffee, I'm doing my work, I'm cleaning up material from the night before. Mm-hmm. And Bill Evans is like a go-to. I look for everything that I haven't listened to yet, everything live. He does a great version of Miles Davis's song Nardis. He almost always did live. That's like the final song. So just listen to any version of that he did, and then I think you'll be hooked. If you like any kind of jazz, he doesn't have a lot of frills, so it's not like jazz like, oh, where's he going? Like, it's always melodic, and I think he's fantastic. I'm so happy I got into him this year. So Bill Evans on the piano.
You know what? You've kind of inspired me. I'm more than aware of him, but I don't have anything by Bill Evans in my collection. I'm gonna have to fix that.
Well, listen to some of those Tony Bennett tracks from the early 80s, and man, it's great.
Yeah, he's a giant for sure. Wow, I didn't pick any jazz guys because I figured if once I pick one, I'm gonna have to pick 12. Like, there's just so many.
You could have a whole series.
Musically, they're on another level from everybody else.
Yeah.
Next, I'm kind of going to a classic rock guy. First time I guess Mark Knopfler could be considered that. But
sure, yeah.
Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers.
Oh, okay.
So I could have picked Duane Allman, who I rank as, if I was ranking rock guitarists, I always rank Duane second. As it's always, to me, Duane and Jimmy are kind of Jimi Hendrix, or you could make a case for either one, but I always think Jimmy's more of a blues-based guitarist. I think Duane has a more rounded catalog of music.
They were jazz guys. Jazz guys too.
Yeah, he played a lot more jazz lines, and he played with at Muscle Shoals and played a lot of soul records, and so he just has a more varied style, I think. But yeah, Dickie Betts. So I love Dickie's tone. Amazing player. He's written some great instrumentals. I mean, Jessica is one of the great instrumentals of all time. Blue Sky, the guitar in that song is just absolutely gorgeous. When the Allman Brothers were first together, and it was Dickie and Duane playing with each other, and then Duane died, that band could have just gone without Dickie stepping up and learning how to play a slide guitar that was almost equal to Duane's, who was probably the greatest slide player ever. And what he did to keep that band going and take over that role of just the one guitarist after they had two incredible guitarists and come up with a great sound. is amazing. And yeah, I just like I said, I love his tone. I can when you hear Dickie Betts the first note, you know it's him. Um, I just pulled out a couple here. I think not a well-known album. It's called Richard Betts, and it's more of a country, a lot of instrumental stuff on here, but he plays with
Cool.
Pastor Clements and all that. This is a really good album.
Wow. I didn't know that.
You ever see
Wow.
it? It's really good. And then he had his own band called Great Southern. So, yeah, I mean, Dickie eventually had big falling out with the Allman Brothers and wasn't involved with them for the last, 10 or 15 years of their existence. But he's still kicking and living in Florida. And I don't know if he's playing much anymore, but amazing guitar player.
And one of the last Allman Brothers still left, him and J-Mo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool pick. That was kind of unexpected for me because you don't think about him as like a main guy. You always think his name that you don't think about with the Allman Brothers for the casual fan like myself. All right, I'm heading back to the old 6-string here, and this is somebody else that I just have loads and loads of respect for. I think when you're talking about modern musicians, this guy, I mean, he's on another plane. I mean, he's a disciple of Buddy Guy and Eric Clapton, and he can play anything. He can play folk, he can play country, he can play jam band, he can play rock, he can play bubblegum pop. John Mayer on the guitar.
I thought you would pick him. He was one guy I was thinking you were going to pick.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen, I mean, the album that I'm showing is not necessarily his crowning achievement in terms of guitar playing, but if you listen to an album, if you listen to like his main album Continuum, which is like his critically acclaimed masterpiece, you listen to songs that he does like Slow Dancing in a Burning Room or Gravity, which is just like a killer blues. Just he makes it cry. I mean, it's very Clapton like. Then you turn to he has a couple of acoustic songs. One of them called "Stop This Train," which is about growing old, where it's just him, playing guitar, and he's like acoustic guitar, but he's somebody else. We were talking about John Prine with his thumb, or Mark Knopfler with his style. Mayer has like 2 or 3 things going on at once too. His thumb just moves up and down the bass strings, and that's part of the reason that makes him so good with the Grateful Dead, with Dead and Company right now, is that he's got that, again, he can go into jazz just like Garcia, but he also brings that blues element into it. So like those blues guys, like early blues, like they have like that slap on the bass and they're picking the melody up here. He's got all of that. And so, I mean, he can do everything.
I would suspect that Jerry Garcia was a big influence on him.
I would say, well, see, actually, he admitted, because when he and Bob Weir first got together about 6 years ago, he admitted he knew the Grateful Dead hits, but he didn't go much further than that. He was always a blues guy growing up.
Yeah.
So he was like, because he started his career in his early 20s, his first album, and he, those early tours, he even would bring out like Buddy Guy out on stage. And he played with B.B. King before he passed away. He's played with Clapton, like at the Crossroads Festival. So, I mean, he's played with his heroes.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy Vaughn. I think he might have played with Jimmy Vaughn. But
I would imagine he's probably crossed paths.
Golly, John Mayer is he's on another level on the guitar, as far as I'm concerned. So he's one of my other guitar picks.
You've mentioned John Mayer and various videos we've done, and I know you're a huge fan, and I just ignored the man except for the stuff he's done with Dead and Company. And
no, you gotta
I really need to give him a chance. I listened to one of his first albums when he was more pop. It was more poppy stuff. Maybe is it Daughter? Is there an album called Daughters or a song called Daughters?
He had a song called Daughters off of the Continuum album. But
yeah, see, I couldn't really get into that album. It just I don't know.
You need to listen to. Yeah, you need to listen to the Born and Raised album first.
Yeah,
that's like his Neil Young Bob Dylan album.
I got to write that down.
Yeah, I know that was on one of my top album lists I've done, and just he's somebody else. He's like Dylan. And I mentioned this in a video where every album is a different album.
Yeah.
It's not mundane.
You know,
So
I think
like he's kind of like, I was gonna say he's done like Dylan. Dylan did the folk thing, but he wanted to move on. Mayer did the radio thing, the pop thing, but he hasn't been on the radio in since 2007.
Yeah.
So, he's a true artist.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. I was kind of thinking you were going to pick him.
Yeah, love him.
Okay, here's a guy you told me you've seen live. One of my favorite musicians as well. The greatest dobro player in the world is Jerry Douglas.
He is that.
Amazing. So I just got this album. I found it in a mall record store. I'm still shocked that I found it. The Jerry Douglas Band from 2017. So, I mean, I think if you just stopped somebody on the street and said, the dobro, yeah, it's kind of a country and Western instrument. It's not, but in the hands of Jerry Garcia, it's not.
Jerry Douglas. Jerry Garcia, maybe.
Jerry Douglas, sorry. You saw this band, right? During this tour.
I saw that tour, yeah.
Yeah. How was it?
Jazz. It was jazz fusion.
Yeah. But they're all just great
With some
players.
country.
So.
Yeah.
This album's great. Yeah, this is not a country album or a bluegrass album at all. They do Tom Waits' 219. He does a great version of Hey Joe, which was made famous by Hendrix. I can't remember who wrote that song. But great album. And it's also, actually, you might as well show it because I forgot to show this and someone gave me shit in the comments. I forgot to show the colored vinyl for that. So,
cool.
Red and black vinyl.
See through too. Very cool.
Great. So, I mean, Jerry has taken, much like Bela Fleck has taken the banjo in a whole different direction. Jerry Douglas has done that with the dobro. And there's actually autographed CD from when I saw him.
Cool.
Another one of my musical heroes that I have met for a couple of minutes anyway. There's I still got my ticket stub. I can't believe it. That was
cool.
2006. He played in a little club up in Toronto. I couldn't believe that he was coming up here and played a little club called the Mod Club Theater. It was crazy.
Well, I saw him it was that same venue I saw Sam Bush. It was 300 people tops were there.
He's done tons of sessions. So he has done, I made a list of this. Check this out. How many records do you think I mentioned somebody played on 500 albums, Tony Levin. How many albums do you think Jerry Douglas has played on? Take a guess.
I've looked it up before. I mean, it's, I don't know, 1,000.
It's over 1,600.
Yeah, good grief.
I mean, this is a well-respected guy who's a solid session guy and a band leader and incredible. He's been, if anybody's an Alison Krauss fan, he played with Alison Krauss in Union Station. He joined that band for a while. He's done albums. He's played with everybody. My favorite quote about Jerry was when he played on a session with John Fogerty, one of his albums. And after when John was promoting his record, he mentioned Jerry Douglas and said Jerry Douglas is the Jimi Hendrix of the dobro. And that's pretty high praise. But I mean, he's taken this instrument in so many different directions. Here's a world music album with V.M. Bott, who plays the Vishnu. What's that album? Mohan Vishu or Veena. Mohan Veena, I think, is the name of the stringed instrument he plays. And but this is just the two of them with Edgar Meyer playing upright bass on it. Incredible record, Bourbon and Rosewater, it's called. Just a beautiful, beautiful record. Definitely, I highly recommend that album. Here's an album he did with the best three dobro players in the world. Mike Aldridge, who was with Seldom Seen, one of the great bluegrass bands ever. And this is another dobro player named Rob Ikes. This is just more dobro than you'd ever want to hear in your life. on one album if you're a Dobro fan. And a jazz album he did called The Best Kept Secret. Derek Trucks plays on this, Sam Bush plays on this, and Bela. Alison Krauss plays on this, John Fogerty plays on this, Bill Frisell plays on this album.
Because he was with those Newgrass guys too. I mean, I know he was in New South early on.
Yeah,
JD
he was.
Crowe.
Absolutely. Yeah. But just what a talent, Jerry Douglas.
Yeah, he is. I thought about Jerry Douglas, but I went against it.
Were you thinking he was going to be on my list?
I figured he would be on your list. He was one of the few that I thought was going to be on there, but I almost put him on mine, but I had so many others that I listened to a lot more that had to make it. Cool pick. I'm gonna stay with the guitar, and I'm going to go more in line with what you're talking about in terms of genre. Sorry for the glare. It's Tony Rice.
Oh, I didn't pick Tony either. He was on my list.
This is the Blake and Rice album, which Norman Blake is another incredible guitarist, but I'm going to focus on Tony because I know him a lot more. We lost him last year. He had a lot of health problems, but I mean, he was to stay in line with New South. He was in New South early on that first album they did with Rounder Records with JD Crowe, him and Jerry Douglas and Ricky Skaggs, just the whole group of guys that were coming up at the same time. And of course, Tony Rice, he has the Rice brothers with his brothers that play all the other instruments. I mean, again, not only a killer guitarist, a great vocalist, but to focus on his guitar, I mean, it goes with the Newgrass style. However, he is very traditional in his playing, but he's one of those, obviously he took lessons. I mean, he took notes from Doc Watson and those types, Merle Travis.
Who else was a big influence was Clarence White.
Clarence White, yeah, from the Byrds and from earlier country sessions. But I mean, songs for me, like he does a great version of Walk On Boy by Doc Watson. He does, this whole album, there's also songs like I'm Not Saying, which is a Gordon Lightfoot song. New River Train, he does a great version of. I'm Coming Back, but I Don't Know When. And he's got a lot of these like duets albums. He did another one with Norman Blake. He has one called Rice and Skaggs with Ricky Skaggs. Just again, one of those guitarists that you hear it and you're like, that's got to be Tony Rice. Just he could make a Martin guitar sound like nothing else. And
there's the famous pizza tapes too with David Grisman. David Grisman, the mandolin player, and Tony Rice played a lot together and played in bands together. And then David and Jerry Garcia were old friends and played a lot together. David brought Tony Rice to meet Jerry Garcia, and they just met in the studio. And there's a CD, I think it's the pizza tapes, where they just talk about, hey man, it's great to meet you. It's great to play with you. And then they play, and then they talk about, and they go, let's just noodle a bit, and then we'll break into a song. It's just two giants playing together. Tony Rice is
those guys like that don't noodle. They play. Their noodling is everybody else's wildest dream. But I mean, my dad and I think my mom too, but dad especially was really big into Tony Rice and saw him a few times. And actually, I just bought this album earlier this year.
I didn't. I wasn't aware of the one they did with Norman Blake, and I'm a big fan of both of them. So I got to check.
This is from 1987, and then they did another one probably 9 or so years later. I think it was called Blake and Rice 2 or something like that.
Wow.
But yeah, you should check it. I mean, this just has great songs on it. Tony Rice. I wish I could have seen him, and of course later.
I never got to see him either. Another guy who didn't come up here that much. So
but when he lost his voice, even it was sad because he was still able to play and he was on sessions, but then he started getting really bad, like essentially arthritis in his hands, and he couldn't play. It pained him to play, so he retired. But Tony Rice, what can you say?
Oh, I'm so glad you picked him. That's my favorite of your picks so far. there, you're going to see Gordon Lightfoot in a couple of days, right?
On the 10th, I believe.
Yeah.
Today's the 3rd, so a week from today, I think.
You mentioned that he did a version of Gordon Lightfoot's "I'm Not Saying," but there is a CD. Tony Rice plays Gordon Lightfoot. It's all Gordon Lightfoot songs, and it is
that's
fantastic.
It's fantastic. Yeah, he's a big influence.
Yeah,
Gordon.
Yeah, he loved Gordon Lightfoot. Absolutely.
He loved Dylan too. He had a lot of Dylan songs, but Gordon Lightfoot especially.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Awesome pick. Awesome pick. You get 5 stars for that, and give your dad a hug for me for liking Tony Rice. That's pretty cool.
All right.
Okay, now I'm going with the guy who started out as a session musician, played with Dylan. He's all over the another self-portrait bootleg series. One of my big influences in playing music because of one of the guys in his band, but David Brownberg.
I've seen him too, yeah.
Great finger picker. David's first session, I think, was with Phil Spector on the Teddy Bears. To know, is to love
him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that David was on that session. There's his first solo album. When I first discovered him, I'll tell you, go back to my my early days when I was an idiot. My cousin and I, stoned on acid, listening to underground radio, and they would play anything. Like, it's all deep album cuts, and you never knew what you were going to hear. It was just, there was no formatted radio then. And they play Delia by David Brownberg, doing the traditional song Delia, just acoustic guitar and a harmonica, and 7 minutes long of him doing this song. She's All I Got Is Gone. That's from this album, and we just went, oh my God, what is that? And bought this record. It's freaking awesome. David Brownberg, self-titled. Been a huge fan ever since. The David Brownberg band, when he put that together, it was like a 7-piece band. They would come to Toronto and play the El Macombo and places like that. And there's actually a picture of the band in here.
Yeah, it's a great picture.
Yeah, I was would see them all the time. Every time they came, I never missed a show, and they were here quite a bit. And he had a guy in the band named Dick Faggy, who was from New York City, and he could play. They're all multi-instrumentalists. The Brownberg can play strings on it, fiddles, mandolins, guitars, whatever. And Dick Faggy would pick up a banjo, and something happened that I just go, every time that banjo comes in on these songs, it just does something to me. And that's when I bought a banjo and started to learn how to play. So I kind of owe my whole musical life to David Brownberg and his band. I had a chance to meet David too, and this is kind of a prized possession. The legendary El Macombo. I don't know if I can take it out of here. To Glenn, best wishes, David Brownberg.
Oh, cool.
Macombo. You can see who was coming up playing: Leo Kottke, the Boomtown Rats, the On Hammer Group. Yeah. Give you look at the. I don't know if that's
menu.
The menu. You can see
$2 for pizza.
Yeah, $2 for a pizza. I'm trying to see what the jug of beer was. I can't remember. It's not. It doesn't even say. I thought it did.
David Brownberg for me was another free show at the same venue, and
really?
it was really sad because there was probably only 100 people there. It can hold about 400. Wow. But their electric instruments, like the sound was off. So they switched about a quarter of the way through and just started playing all acoustic, and so it ended up being like an acoustic show. So it was really cool, and they did a couple of acapella like off the microphone. Yeah.
He's a great acoustic guitar player too, as well as an electric player. Great slide player.
Yeah, I didn't miss out. I didn't miss out when they switched to acoustic.
Yeah.
It was cool.
He amazing musician. He quit playing music for a long time. He got into making violins, and his violins are worth a ton of money. He learned had a Via Luther and then made violins, and the David Brownberg mandolins or violins are worth a ton of money. He did that for like probably 10 years or more before then he got back into playing again. And I think he's
Wow.
still around. He just had his 75th birthday last year, and there was a live, it was live on YouTube, the concert. Really good. I imagine it's still on there if you went to if you plugged in David Brownberg. It's what we're seeing.
Cool.
Yeah, he's been a major influence on my life musically.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, you people like that, that you stick with them throughout their career too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so cool. All right, this is the first and only installment of the drumming category for me, and I think you had mentioned you don't have any drummers on your list, so this will double down for both of us. And again, kind of with Paul McCartney, I didn't want to pick this man, but I was like, I've got to pick him, and that Mr. Keith Moon.
Oh.
And I specifically wanted to show who's next because of just Won't Get Fooled Again by itself. I mean, obviously he stole part of that from Ringo. Just the sound from like the end, like like that's a very Ringo. That's a Ringo feel. But I mean, the early stuff like My Generation, just how he slams the drums, just down, 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 down. Like I mean, he's going to town on it. You watch those live recordings from Woodstock, from the Smothers Brothers show, where you know Pete Townsend lost his hearing, that's where he attributes his hearing loss to.
Yeah.
But and I don't want to get too in depth about Keith Moon and his personal life, but and of course he was Moon the Loon, so he was crazy. So his antics filled in on the drums. So I mean, he tore up a drum set every night. The Who was never the same after him. I mean, now they have Zach Starkey on the drums. Who's
they lost
son.
their power. They lost the power.
But Keith Moon is the drummer that he kind of, in terms of like classic rock drummers, he's the guy. I mean, even guys like John Bonham, who came up just slightly after the Who had made it big. You can see his antics with kind of going to Keith Moon, or even Neil Peart with Rush. I mean, all those guys had to look to to Keith Moon as some sort of inspiration. And I'm sure when they came around, I'm sure Ringo was looking at him too, thinking like, "Ooh, should I even try to go that direction?" So,
but that wouldn't have fit the Beatles anyway. So
it wouldn't. No, and Ringo admitted that he never liked drum solos anyway. So, Keith Moon.
I was fortunate enough to see the Who twice with Keith Moon.
I envy you.
In the early 70s. Yeah. Very cool. I'm proud that I got to see him. He was a crazy bastard. That's all you can say. I think I told the story when I did the Who thing with Rich Strickler, but I've just finished reading Kenny Jones's book. Kenny Jones was in the Who after Keith passed away, and also
cool
Small Faces and the Faces, and great drummer. And he is, his autobiography is one of the best music biographies I've ever read, because he's just grew up at that time and just.
I don't have that. Cool.
Definitely worth reading. And he talks about when the Small Faces were touring with the Who through England, and him and Keith became buddies. And Keith decided that he wanted to drive his Rolls Royce all through England to each show, each different place they were playing. And he didn't drive himself; he had a driver. And so they would party in the back while the driver was driving to the next town. And they pulled up in this town. I can't remember where it was, but the driver pulls the Rolls up to the front, and Keith Moon gets out, and the driver gets out. Kenny Jones gets out, and the manager came up to them, and I guess they parked it in an appropriate spot or something. And he said to the driver, "Would you mind moving the Rolls?" And Keith Moon said, "Oh, I'll move it." And he jumped in the car, and he drove the Rolls right through the windows of the doors of the hotel, drove it right up to the front desk where you check in, and got out and said, "Is my room ready?"
Oh my word. Yeah. And what's funny about Keith Moon, again, I want to elongate Keith Moon, but he he always said he would have joined the Beach Boys if he would have had the chance. He said he would have quit the Who to join the Beach Boys.
That's
So that
cool.
just shows like the difference. But like, I mean, the Beach Boys drumming was just, it was steady. Dennis Wilson,
yeah.
and then of course,
Ringo would have been a better fit.
yeah, but like, imagine like Keith Moon playing like Surfer Girl. I mean, he would have, broken the surfboards out of the water. But anyway, he's, in my opinion, I think he's the greatest to ever live. He's one of the ones I will say, I think he's the greatest drummer who, like, out of my list of people, they're not all the greatest at their craft, but I think Keith Moon, in terms of classic rock, he's the greatest.
Well, I think there's the three I think that would be considered the classic rock band would be Ginger Baker, John Bonham, and Keith Moon.
Keith, yeah.
And I saw all three, and my favorite's Ginger Baker of the ones I saw, but I mean Keith Moon was incredible. They're all three of them are amazing. My favorite one that I actually saw live was Ginger Baker. He was unreal.
Cool.
But yeah, that's a great pick. Okay, my next pick, very important person to me, one of my all-time heroes in life, not musically, but musically, that's true too. One of the coolest dudes that ever walked the planet, Jerry Garcia. I just love this man. I love his personality, what he stood for, and he just lived to play music. This guy. When he wasn't in the Grateful Dead, he had the Jerry Garcia band going on. He just wanted to play, and until the day he died,
he did. Good grief! And then he did the stuff with David Grisman, like he did solo stuff. I mean, yeah, he's like Jerry Douglas or any of those guys, or even Bob Weir now. I mean, they play for they don't care about the money.
No, he just wanted to play, and would play with anyone, and this stuff is incredible, and I got to see the Grateful Dead. I only saw Jerry once live at the Festival Express in 1970 as the Grateful Dead, and that's the only time I ever saw him. He did. I always try and find out if I don't recall the Jerry Garcia band ever coming to Toronto, but somebody who's watching this from the Toronto area maybe could straighten me out on that. I might have just missed it, but incredible. I didn't really get into Jerry's solo stuff early. I wasn't even aware he was doing solo stuff for the longest time. But this was the album that got me into it, which came out in the 80s, which is the Jerry Garcia band, acoustic band. This is an incredible album. And I just love the man. Again, his tone is so distinctive. He could play anything. He could play jazz or rock, blues,
bluegrass.
He came out of a bluegrass world. That's where he started as a banjo player. And just an amazing human being. And
he's just about in all of your videos too, with your poster.
He is. Hold on a sec. There's the man right there. Yes. Absolutely worship.
He's part of your channel every day.
Yes. Very cool. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what can you say? All right. I'm sticking to the same band that I was just in. I'm going a little bit different route. This is my favorite. Well, I would say probably my favorite rhythm guitar player is Mr. Pete Townsend.
Oh.
And I'm showing another Who album. I'm showing Tommy because I think that's where he shines on rhythm guitar. I mean, you listen to Pete Townsend is somebody, he doesn't play very hard chords. Again, kind of like John Prine, he sticks to a lot of the same. He plays a lot of ADE runs for you guitar players, like the chords. You may listen to a song like The Seeker, which isn't on Tommy, but that's a good example of like a Who acoustic run, like the whole Tommy album. His acoustic guitar is really up in the mix of all the songs. I mean,
yeah, you're right.
Even like the overture and the underture songs, where you hear the different snippets of a lot of the songs, the themes. I mean, of course, Pinball Wizard is the hit on the album, where you all know what that sounds like, just killer, like breaking all the strings sounding. But I mean, you listen to songs like Amazing Journey on this album, which is Do You Think It's All Right? Well, no, not that one. I'm thinking of Tommy, Can You Hear Me, which is just like the little 1 minute and a half, like down, down, down. It's so good. And then of course, See Me, Feel Me is on this, but like just the guitar throughout the whole album. It's really, I would dare to say, a Pete Townsend solo album, kind of like Pet Sounds was to Brian Wilson.
Yeah.
The Who simply filled in the parts, but I mean, if you listen to most like the demos of this album, where it's Pete with playing the instruments, I mean, good grief. And then again, to go outside of Tommy, there's a live performance that he did, I think in the late 90s or early 2000s, where it's just him on an old Stratocaster playing Magic Bus. He says something along the lines of like, he says what the guitar was, and he said, and this is how it's meant to be played. And so Magic Bus is like this, for those of you that don't know, kind of bluesy, like Bo Diddley. Like
it's kind of like a Bo Diddley riff, yeah.
Kind of like that. And it's just him on the electric guitar, solo electric, which not many people do. It's usually acoustic, but I mean, and then you listen to his demos of like Bargain from Who's Next, or even when he acoustically does, like Won't Get Fooled Again, on just like his like Gibson acoustic guitar. It's killer. And he does it so effortlessly. And like, I know they said that he has the strength. If he, back in his younger days, he could have broken all 6 strings in one stroke, and he did, but just to see if he could do it.
Yeah. Wow.
So I mean, he just had nothing but power behind his flailing, windmill strums. So Pete Townsend.
Tommy's a whole different album when you hear them do it live, eh? When they're doing it with electric instruments and the power of Moon and with Soul, and it's almost like it's a totally different record. But I agree with you that the studio album is, it is Pete Townsend. It's his album.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard his first solo album, The Who Came First?
Not all the way through, no.
Oh, that's a great record. It's a great record. And I just recently picked up vinyl. I found it used was the one he did with Ronnie Lane too, Rough Mix. That's a great record too. Wow, just a lot of great acoustic stuff on Who Came First if you're interested. And he did some great solo stuff. His solo albums are all really solid too, for the most part. Yeah.
Well, he's a master in the studio, so of course he can. He's like McCartney or Jeff Lynne. I mean, he can play everything too.
And I love his voice. I think he's got a great voice. Yeah.
He hates it. He still hates it, but yeah, I love it.
No. Fantastic singer. Wow. Okay. That was Jerry Garcia. Another musical hero who I got a chance to meet. Again, one of the thrills of my life meeting him, actually. He recorded one of the, probably, I think, the greatest Roots album ever recorded. Very influential album in string music. John Hartford.
I knew you were going to pick him.
Actually produced by David Brownberg, who we just talked about. Amazing, amazing album. Norman Blake, who you mentioned, is on here. Tut Taylor playing dobro. Vassar Clements and John. Amazing, amazing record. Really, just if you're an acoustic musician, this album influenced you. And I got to meet John. And I took a pic. He opened for the Earl Scruggs Review in the 70s. I've told the story before and showed the autograph, but I can't. It's hanging on my wall. He opened for the Earl Scruggs Review in Toronto in sometime in the mid 70s, and I was there. He used to put a battery pack on him and play the fiddle and just wander around and through the crowd and that. And I followed him. There wasn't a lot of people there yet. And I followed him up and I took this picture of him with the kind of the sunset behind him. It just turned, I'm not a photographer at all, but it just turned out to be a great picture. And I had it blown up into like a 24 by whatever picture and had it framed on my wall for years. And then John was playing, we have this down at the harbor in Toronto. They had this harborfront stage and it was free concerts. And John was doing an afternoon concert there for free. And I took my picture out of the frame and rolled it up and took it down there with the hopes that I would get to meet him. And there wasn't many people around. And I just walked backstage without anybody stopping me. And John's sitting there in a little room. And I introduced myself. and showed him the picture. He freaking loved it.
That's so cool.
He called his handler in or whoever with him and said, "Oh, check this out." And I asked him if he'd sign it for me. And John was an expert in calligraphy. And he signed his name, John Hartford, in this calligraphy style writing. It's just a treasure of mine, and to meet one of my heroes. But this is a great album. Morning Bugle is probably my second favorite. And John, he had a great career. He was, as a young man, he fell in love with the river, near the Mississippi River. He would study the riverboat captains, and he became a riverboat captain himself, actually. And he wrote one of the songs that's considered one of the top 100 songs of all time and one of the most recorded songs of all time, Gentle on My Mind, which Glen Campbell did a big hit with, and made John a lot of money, which enabled him to play the music he wanted to play, which was string music. He was proficient on guitar, banjo, and fiddle, and he developed his own styles of playing because he wanted to accompany himself when he sang. And he really came up, as much as he kind of played a real Scruggs style banjo with these 3-finger rolls, he came up with his own way of playing that, which is really distinctive. And you can tell John Hartford the second you hear him. And he does this kind of double thumb thing and playing the melody line with his fingers. And it's a really, it sounds simple, but again, like we were talking with John Prine, it's not that easy to do.
Yeah.
I've been trying for years to get
That's my favorite kind of music. Yeah.
I can't do it. And the other thing is he had such a low voice that he had somehow had a neck reinforced, and he had a banjo made that it was a longer neck, and he could tune it low, like a regular banjo is tuned to a G. He tuned it down to an E. That's a long way to drop.
Oh. Yeah.
He didn't go up to
it.
Yeah. So his banjo was he was playing open G chords, but he was tuned to an E.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and if there is a John Hartford model banjo out there that you can get that's I don't know if it's capable of doing that, but they're just an amazing musician, an amazing man. We lost him too soon to cancer. He was 63 when he died.
Cool pick. I knew you were going to pick that because I know you're a big fan of that album that you showed. But so very cool. All right, I am down to the last two here, so I'll try to get through this fairly quickly. This is probably, I would say, the common music fan, this is probably the least known person on my list. Maybe, if you like rock and stuff, maybe Bill Evans was out of your radar, but for guitarists, Mr. Nick Drake. Not very much is known about Nick, other than where he was from, where he was born, and he was in England, and about when he passed away. There's not he didn't perform live. He had really bad anxiety and depression that prevented him from playing live. He did very early in his career, but he played, and there's a lot of people that question what type of guitar he played, what kind of strings he used. But he's somebody, he was in all sorts of different tunings. So I'm sure, if he were to have played live, he would have had to have a dozen or so guitars on stage with him for the tunings. And he only put out 3 studio records. And this is the first one that was called 5 Leaves Left. It's mostly just Nick on guitar, a couple of string sections, like on the song Riverman, which is actually just recently covered by Chrissie Hynde on a record that she did with an orchestra. Really good version. But the opening track is called Time Has Told Me. It's just him on guitar to start it out. Another song called 3 Hours, which is really just, I can't even describe what kind of picking he does, because it's not jazz, it's definitely not rock or pop. It's, I guess, classical is the best way to describe it. And songs like cello song on this where he plays the same kind of like he hums along with and plays to the same melody as that cello in the background is playing with the song. Then his last album, Pink Moon, the title track is great on guitar. He has a song called The Fly, which is really good on guitar. Nick Drake is just somebody, he sounds to me like what Autumn sounds like, what Autumn should sound like. It's very, like, it's gray music. Like it makes you feel like you're in like a cold gray mountain. And if you don't know Nick Drake, or if you just know a couple of his songs, it doesn't take any time just to listen to all three of his albums. And really, whenever I listen to Nick Drake, I listen to them all as one album. So I listen to Five Leaves Left. Then his second album is called Brighter Later, which is almost Astral Weeks like. And I think, I might be wrong, but I think a couple of the musicians are from Astral Weeks. So it's it was kind of like, I guess, him trying to go a little bit more mainstream. And then Pink Moon, he kind of jumped back to more of the style of Five Leaves Left. And I know he of course, he only sold a few thousand albums in his lifetime. He died in his 20s. He killed himself from depression, but his guitar playing, it's just so good. It's one of those, like, I could listen to just the guitar, but his voice matches the guitar playing as well. So check out Nick Drake if you don't know anything about him.
I have to admit, I am a total novice when it comes to Nick Drake. I am only aware of the name, and I know he's made quite a resurgence in the last few years. Like, people are really recognizing him now as the talent that he was, and I don't think he got that recognition when he was alive.
No.
Sadly. But I have had, what's the album called? Something Later. What's the second one?
Brighter Later.
Brighter Later. I've had that CD in my hand 10 times and not bought it for some reason, and I know it's been highly recommended to me, and I haven't pulled the trigger on any Nick Drake yet. And it's
only 3 albums. Just buy them all. They're all fantastic. And if you like Astral Weeks, which I know you do, Brighter Later is like Astral Weeks.
Yeah. I got to do that.
And like I said, it puts you,
picked him.
Like, when late September comes around, you put in some Nick Drake. You know, it's like people listen to Christmas music, you know, in November, December. Nick Drake is meant for October into, you know, around Thanksgiving time. Like
okay,
that.
Well, I guess it's almost time for me to order a Nick Drake album then. September's coming soon.
Oh my word! It's fall, and like I said, the 3 albums combined aren't even, I don't think, 2 hours long total. So
okay.
Albums, but
I'm doing it, Nick Drake. I'm doing it.
Let me know. Yes. I want to see you talk about it.
Yeah, we'll have a discussion about that. Wow, that's very cool. I'm glad you picked him. Next, my favorite guitar player of all time. Not the greatest guitar player of all time, but this man has introduced me to so many styles of music, and I just love them. Ry Cooder.
Yep.
It's my favorite Ry Cooder album. Paradise.
So before you get into Ry Cooder, I am playing with my band the song Jesus on the Main Line.
Really?
In a couple of weeks. Yeah. I'm playing mandolin and harmonica. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Fantastic. That would be awesome.
Hopefully there'll be a video. I'll put a video up.
I was going to say, you need to record that. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
A great song.
It's really good in practice.
What a great song. That's going to be really good. Oh, man, that excites me. Yeah, I love Ry. I saw Ry Cooder in 1973 or 74 at Massey Hall on a double bill with Randy Newman. Incredible show. And I've seen him since times. Yeah, it's an amazing guitar player. Probably most known for his slide playing. He's one of the great slide players of all time. Very influential guitar player. Keith Richards was a huge fan, and Ry went in and played, actually. I guess the best known Stone songs that he plays on are Love in Vain off of Let It Bleed, and Sister Morphine off of, he plays the slide in Sister Morphine, which is incredible. If you ever listen to that song, it just starts off with Keith's acoustic, and then Ry comes in with that slide. Oh my God, off of Sticky Fingers. So sweet. He's another man who, like, he just introduced me to so much different styles of music because he can play anything. He's involved with, in Cuba, he did that Buenos Aires, what was that called? The club? I can't remember. He produced that. He's done all kinds of
Yeah, I
side
don't know.
soundtrack work, and there's a soundtrack actually box set of all the soundtracks
Cool.
he's done. Paris, Texas, The Long Riders, Great Western. Uh, yeah, he just does great soundtrack music. I mean, he's an amazing guitar player. Here's an album he did with VM Bott, the same guy that Jerry Douglas did a world music album with. Another incredible album, Meeting by the River. And here's one he did with the Spanish guy, Manuel Galban. It's a really good album too. Mamo Sinuendo. This is like Mexican surf music.
Oh, cool.
Really cool album. Really good. Yeah, so Brett Cooter. Can't say enough about him. Just absolutely love his playing.
I knew he would make the list.
And I think he's putting a new album out. I saw him following his Instagram page. He was showing himself sitting around some recording devices there. So I get the feeling we might be hearing from Rye sometime in the next little while.
Cool.
Okay, I think we got one more to go.
One more. Yep. And again, this is another one, not the best at his craft, but he's, again, banjo player. So it's kind of neat that you just mentioned, you mentioned John Hartford, just the last pick.
You steal my heart whenever you say banjo.
So as some of you know, if anybody that follows my channel, I just got a banjo and I played it for the first time about a month ago and kind of have left it on and off. But this guy is the reason that I got the banjo, and I'm going to show his picture there. That's Mr. Scott Avett of the Avett Brothers, and this is the album cover. Scott is in the middle there of those three silhouettes. But Scott Avett of the Avett Brothers, just again, he's not Earl Scruggs, he's not John Hartford, he's not Doug Dillard, he's not even Peter Tork from the Monkees. He flails his banjo playing. He picks out the melody. I know we've talked about it a little bit.
Oh, he's played some beautiful melodies on the banjo. Yeah, he's a real
And he's, again, he can go like almost like, because the Avett Brothers, when they first started, were kind of a heavy metal band before they really made albums.
Yeah.
Like when they played like in college towns and stuff in North
I've heard
Carolina.
I've heard some of that stuff.
So I think what he said was he wanted an instrument louder than the guitar because he was into loud music. So he moved to banjo, and then they got into the country music and bluegrass and that sort of thing. And of course they played gospel in church. So harmony was always there for him. But, songs like, Talk on Indolence, Distraction Number 74, One Line Wonder, all of those songs are very different Scott Avett songs. Songs like Talk on Indolence was just like, like he's just thrashing away. But then like One Line Wonder, which is another early song, he's picking the melody with his brother on the guitar, his brother Seth, matching the melody on the guitar. So he can play anything, and like he can, when it's like a quiet ballad, he is playing just ever so softly, like in the background. Like every now and then you'll hear like a couple of the plucks, but that's all he needs to play.
There's one. Okay, I have it, and I can't remember the name of it. The album is called "You and Love and I."
I and Love and You.
Yeah, there's a song on there that he plays a little beautiful banjo part to. I can't think of what song it is.
It's probably.
I just absolutely love it. One of my favorite banjo parts on any song.
It might be Laundry Room? Might be the song.
No, it's a song. Is there a song about kind of growing old or something? Was it oh man, I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I can't remember either. While you're talking about them, I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, but I mean, and if you've seen the Avett Brothers live, I mean, in any era, I mean, early on they were more rambunctious on stage. Now they're more committed to the melody and writing a well-crafted song, and they've really grown as songwriters. But as a banjo player, I mean, Scott, and he plays with all the picks on his fingers. So he doesn't just play, like I play like a guitarist. where like I more strum and pick out the melody kind of within the banjo. I know Glenn is more of like a traditional. He does more of the rolls and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But Scott's a good mix of both, like because he plays guitar and then he also has banjo, so he's got both of those facets in his playing.
Is it possible that it's 10,000 words?
Yeah. 10,000 words is very acoustic based. Yeah, and it's a really pretty song. It's a really pretty song. So that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I haven't seen the Avett Brothers live. I would love to. They are a great band.
Yeah, and all of their stuff, especially their later stuff with Rick Rubin, is just superb.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's my number 12. And again,
my daughter got to meet Rick Rubin last week.
Last week, that's cool.
Yeah, my daughter was she called me and said, "You know Rick Rubin is?" Like, "Oh yeah." She didn't know him. And his boyfriend. So my daughter works for the WWE, right? The wrestling organization, and he came into the World Wrestling for some reason. I don't know what his tie is to wrestling, unless he's a fan or something. But he came in and he was just hanging out, and so she got to meet him. And my son-in-law Daryl is a referee for the World WWE. Daryl plays music too. He's a really good musician. He loves music, and he knew Rick Rubin right away, and he was like really excited to meet him. Mm-hmm. But I'm going, no, he's a heavyweight, man. This guy's got a resume.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that was very cool. Wow. Yeah, Avett Brothers. Let's get back on track here. Yeah, great pick. Okay, my last one. It's probably, if we were ranking these, he would have been my number one. So I'm saving for last. I don't know why this man means so much to me in my life. Bela Fleck.
I knew it. Yeah.
He is my musical hero. He just is. He's just incredible. I love everything he does. I've met him so many times, and he is the nicest human being on earth. And I won't go into all the times I've met him. I kind of Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. I kind of called myself a Fleck head instead of a Deadhead for the Grateful Dead, and I dragged my wife all over. We've been all over to see Bela. We've driven to South Carolina to see him. We've been seeing him in Boston. We've seen him in Cleveland. We've seen him in Buffalo. We've seen him in Colorado, Toronto. Like so many times I can't even count. Like I couldn't even count the number of times I've seen this man perform. Incredible. So fortunate to get this Bela Fleck and the Flecktones vinyl a couple of years ago. I found it. It's very rare. I paid $80 for it, mint condition. It's like a prized possession. This album will never leave my hands. But Bela just took the banjo into another universe. And anybody who just thinks the banjo is a hillbilly instrument in the hands of this man. I actually saw Bela backstage back in like 1979 or 1980. And he picked up a guitar. He was just sitting there, and I walked up to him, and he was playing the guitar like a wizard. He doesn't even play guitar. Yeah. He's just Jerry Douglas talked about Bela once and just said Bela is just an incredible musician who could play any instrument he wants, but he just happened to pick the banjo, and he took it in just another universe. I mean, the man has played. He started out as a bluegrass guy, obviously. And then came up with this band, Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, with Victor Wooten and the amazing bass player who could have made my list too, where they melded funk and bluegrass and jazz and rock and fused it all together and came up with this unique sound that is just one of my favorite bands of all time, Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. And then he branched off and he played classical music and jazz and I don't know. I mean, here's just some of the stuff. I mean, here's an album he did with Chick Corea. I mean, it doesn't get better than Chick Corea.
Rest in peace.
Chick Corea and Bela Fleck. He did this album. If you can ever find this, the deluxe edition of this album called Music for Two with Edgar Meyer. it is amazing. There's a DVD that comes with this album, and it's a 45-minute documentary on them putting a tour together, and Edgar writing this song that is so intricate that that he had trouble playing it after he wrote it, and Bela had to learn it, and they had to learn it to perform it for one of the shows.
Wow.
And basically the whole thing is just watching two musical geniuses trying to figure this thing out. And if you can find the music for 2 DVD, any musician would just lose their mind watching it. It's so good.
And I'm sure you want to plug, he's got a new album coming out.
He's got a new album coming out, which I've already pre-ordered. Pre-ordered the vinyl, and I actually messaged him afterwards and said, I noticed after I ordered it, I went back on the website and it was sold out. And I messaged him, and he messaged me back, and I said, Bela, I see the album sold out already. I said, you should reconsider putting your entire back catalog on vinyl. I said it would sell like hotcakes. And he said he doesn't have the rights to it, so he can't. He has no say in it. So
wow,
unfortunately. But he made a classical album, which is absolutely beautiful. Perpetual Motion. This is an incredible, just a beautiful recording. Just an easy listening, beautiful record. He did this award-winning documentary called "Throw Down Your Heart," where he went back to Africa to trace the roots of the banjo and played with all African musicians. And it's an amazing documentary. I think you can watch this on YouTube, and well worth watching. Throw Down Your Heart, beautiful documentary. Again, it won awards. There's some jazz stuff playing with the Marcus Roberts Trio. I saw this tour. This was with, Zakir Hussain, the tabla player who played. He's an incredible percussionist from India. So. Played with Ravi Shankar and has his own band and played with, as a world musician, one of the superstars. So they did this tour with Edgar Meyer, Bela Fleck, and Zakir Hussain. It's called The Melody of Rhythm. It's absolutely incredible album. I got to see the show. Sat front row, was just mesmerized.
Cool.
This is one of his solo albums called Natural Bridge, which is an incredible record. And again, the world music that I mentioned with Jerry Douglas playing with VM Bott and Mike Cooter. This is Bela doing the same thing. This is called Tabula Rasa, with a woman from Chinese woman called Jai Bing Chen, who plays an uru. I don't know what it is. And then VM Bott playing his Mohan Veena and Bela on the banjo. It's really an interesting record. But just to show where he's taken the banjo. So if you think that the banjo is a hillbilly instrument, think again.
Sure. Yeah,
he's a musical genius as far as I'm concerned, and I love him dearly, and I could just talk about him all day. But I'm not going to. Oh, okay. I think we're done.
I think so.
Was that fun?
It was very fun. Thank you again for the invite. And everybody check out all the artists if you don't know them.
Yeah, I hope
a lot of new stuff.
I was thinking about it as we were doing this, and I know both of us do this. We write down each other's lists because we don't know beforehand. And I like to think that we're kind of motivating each other to look into different stuff. And I kind of, in the back of my mind, I'm hoping if anybody gets anything out of these videos, I hope there's at least one artist that they go, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to check that out. That would be my goal when we do these.
Yeah, and definitely, people that comment, if any of these, if you don't know them, if you've bought their stuff based off like what we've talked about, let us know, because that's kind of cool when we can like inspire you to buy it. Like hopefully, like I know with Glenn, I've listened to more John Hartford than I didn't know about him other than his name until I started watching Glenn's videos, and I know I've got Glenn to buy a couple of Monkeys albums or related albums and just different things like that you know,
Yeah.
comment if you've been inspired by any of these.
Yeah,
So
that's very cool.
thank you
So,
again, Glenn.
yeah, thanks again, Sam. So we're going to be back another week or two, whatever it is, next week or the week after with another one. I think we're going to do, what did we decide on?
15 bands, I think.
Yeah, favorite bands. So not solo artists, bands. It's kind of been inspired from Michael at 45 RPM audiophile, our friend from Germany, and Sam Rideau, who's on the West Coast, who did a complimentary thread on his 15 favorite bands. So check out both those channels and watch their videos. They picked out some interesting bands that I've never paid any attention to in my life. I was writing down, making notes. A band called The Fall. Do you know these guys?
I've heard of them.
That was Michael's favorite band. Like, you know, he was picking Floyd and Zeppelin and,
Wow.
and bands like that. And I'm waiting for the Beatles to come up. He never mentioned the Beatles once. And he comes at The Fall. I'm like, who the heck are these guys? So I listened. It sounded kind of punky, I guess. I don't know, kind of punk rock, maybe. I don't know, but they were good. But
Stay
yeah,
tuned
so
for what we have.
it's nice to get inspired to listen to something different. So that's the point, I guess. Thanks,
Indeed.
Sam, so much for doing this. I appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to our next video. So everybody,
Yes, sir.
have a wonderful day. Peace out and all that groovy stuff.